want better etiquette. But more than anything, I want better execution. Are we clear on that? I want better fucking execution. I want you to get a little bit pissed off. All right, not a lot of people expect very much from us. Do they? Do they? You've been reading about us? Not a lot of people expect enough from us. I'm tired, man. I'm tired of reading about it. It's time for you to stick your foot up somebody's ass, man. I'm looking for relentless, every situation strain. I want everybody to pick it up tonight because we're capable of being a great football team.
Oh, yes. Welcome to the Hard Knocks podcast, where each week we recap, break down, and offer insights on the episode that aired on Tuesday night. Knock on wood if you're with me. That's Jon Gruden's line. I am Peter Schrager, your host, and after that Gruden speech, I was and am ready to run through a brick wall. But this episode wasn't really all about Jon Gruden. No, this one may as well have been dubbed the Antonio Brown Experience. The Raiders dominated football headlines last week, and the pressure was on the Hard Knocks producers to provide the viewers with the inside story on what was really going on out in Napa behind closed doors. I'm one of four hosts on the NFL Network show Good Morning Football, and on Tuesday morning's show, before the episode aired, my colleague Kyle Brandt said this was as anticipated an episode of an HBO series since The Sopranos finale. A bit of an exaggeration? Perhaps, but if you're in the football world and you're a fan of the program, you were dying to see what really was going on in Oakland last week. So did the episode live up to the hype? I'm not sure about that, but at the very least, we got some information that we did not have before. So where do you want to begin, the head or the toes? Let's go with the latter. And my Jerry Springer final thought on last week's Hard Knocks podcast episode was that Brown's frostbitten foot would end up being the storyline of the week. And despite all that helmet drama, we'll get to that in a bit, Brown would not have been on the field even if he had the right piece of equipment on his head, because the equipment that has made him Tony Toe Tap over the years, his feet, still aren't right. Not yet, at least, and Brown did indeed suffer an injury using a cryogenic chamber that severely damaged his feet. So bad that as of Tuesday's episode, he still hadn't stepped back on the practice field with his teammates. First, we get the visual of his feet, and it is something. Dead skin, misfiguration.
Yeah, my feet is pretty much getting circumcised, right? All right?
Yeah,
for real.
Like circulation?
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah, with the new skin, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of like a pullback right now.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, I fucking got circumcised on my feet, you know. Hopefully my feet born again and I freaking go run faster. Feel sorry for me later. Thank you.
And then we get Brown's explanation on how those feet came to be.
I literally was on a vacation in Paris. I was training, and I was trying cold therapy to recover my body. And I got out, and I felt my foot burning. So I was like, man, I felt a hot sensation. So the next, 24 hours, it swelled up. Got really big. I couldn't really walk. I put pressure. The doctor came over, drained a little out. Scalpel the next day, freaking scissors the next day, and just kind of let it leak all out. So as everything leaked all out, I was able to put a lot of pressure. Thankfully, my trainer was working me out in the midst of my I can't be on my feet, so I'm crawling within workouts, just, getting other stuff better and everything get better.
Look, that's all fine, but Brown was nowhere to be found for the remainder of the week, not at practice, not on the playing field, not in the building. And the Raiders and Rams were having what's called joint practices last week, and Rams veteran safety Eric Weddle found Derek Carr on the sideline during practice. Of course, what he want to talk about? Antonio Brown.
How about old AB? Where's AB at? He get his feet fixed?
He's got to get his feet fixed, bro.
What in the world?
He's got to get his feet fixed.
How long you sitting there? 30 minutes? Bro, you can't overpower the cryotherapy.
No.
Raiders general manager Mike Mayock, speaking with longtime broadcaster Brent Musburger, didn't seem too concerned.
He's going to be fine. I'm not going to get into all the medical because we're not supposed to this time of year. But at the end of the day, he's like a thoroughbred.
Jon Gruden, of course, weighed in as well.
Has anybody seen my friend Antonio Brown?
That's a serious injury he had, man. I mean, a serious burn. I support this guy. I think that's what needs to be said. This foot injury wasn't his fault. This was a total accident.
So we got plenty of airtime, plenty of inside access, and plenty of opinions on Antonio Brown's feet. What was impressive to me is that there was no anger from Jon Gruden. There was no real frustration towards the player Antonio Brown. If anything, there was a little bit of frustration and some trepidation and genuinely missing of Antonio Brown at practice. Of course, there was more to the story of Antonio Brown's week than just his damaged feet. It involved his choice of a helmet, which was briefly alluded to at the end of the show. And yet again, Jon Gruden seemed to have Antonio Brown's back.
The helmet thing is a personal matter to him. He has a strong feeling about what he's worn on his head, and we're supporting him. And we hope Antonio is back here soon because he's exciting to be around.
Ah, the helmet deal. Okay, it was all over the news last week and over the weekend, and yet it was not a real central piece to Hard Knocks Episode 2. So what is the story? Here's what I've got from both following all the updates that other reporters are giving and had given, and also from some original reporting of my own. And I'm going to summarize it for you at home the best way I can. Essentially, the NFL and the NFLPA, which is the players' union, agreed upon and instituted a new rule 2 years ago to start monitoring the helmets players wore on the field. The goal, of course, was to start instituting and requiring safer helmets. But last season was considered a grace period, which means for one season, the players could still wear whatever helmet they wanted. The policy mandates that players may only wear equipment that is certified by an organization called NOCSE. That's the National Operating Committee on Standards for Athletic Equipment. But NOCSE does not certify any equipment that is older than 10 years. So the helmet that Antonio Brown has worn for his entire career is older than 10 years, and the manufacturer stopped making them altogether in 2011. All of which is to say, it does not meet the NFL's new policy. Any player who wears a helmet that does not meet the agreed upon qualifications, whether it's in practice or a game, would be in breach of his contract. And when you breach your contract, you forfeit your entire salary. So here's the issue at hand. Antonio Brown's not the only superstar in the league who has to change his helmet this season. Bigger names than him, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, for example, are being forced to change their longtime helmets too. Brady's won 6 different Super Bowls, and even he is changing his helmet and still getting used to it. Here's Tom Brady in a Monday interview on The Greg Hill Show on WEEI.
I don't really love the one that I'm in, but I don't really have much of a choice, so I'm just trying to do the best I can to work with it.
And that's Tom Brady, maybe the greatest quarterback and greatest player to ever play the game. Look, there are over 2,000 players currently on NFL rosters, and up until Tuesday, every single one of them was playing and practicing in a helmet that was approved by the league, and every single player agreed to this, except for one, Antonio Brown. So he spent Friday away from the team, meeting with the league and lawyers on this issue. He needed an independent arbitrator rule on the case, which he lost. He conceded on Monday, and by Tuesday, he said he'd be coming back to the Raiders with a new helmet. This was the biggest story in football. So where was all of this helmet drama on episode 2 of Hard Knocks?
Antonio Brown's story wasn't really that big of a deal at camp.
That's Ken Rodgers, Vice President of Production for NFL Films and the show head of Hard Knocks.
This show has become one of those cultural touchstones of the National Football League where everyone's expecting a certain level of access, which we, of course, have. And sometimes that leads to expectations that aren't really true. In the outside world, this becomes a huge media story. But as documentarians, we're wiring players every day. We're wiring coaches. We're inside meeting rooms. Antonio Brown doesn't really come up. Every single player there is trying to do their job, make the team. They're worried about themselves. Not that they don't like AB or care about AB or want his feet to heal or care about the helmet thing. It's they have their own problems. Coach Gruden and Mike Mayock, they have 89 other players they're thinking about. What the rest of the world is really focused on, sometimes the teams aren't. The helmet thing in particular is happening in a courtroom 3,000 miles away. We're not there. That's not part of training camp. And the show is Hard Knocks training camp with the Oakland Raiders, not training camp plus courtroom legal procedures.
Okay, but then this is fascinating to me because, First Take had the first A block, which is their first segment on ESPN, 11 minutes on Antonio Brown. We do Good Morning Football on NFL Network. All 3 hours, 7, 8, and 9, we start with Antonio Brown's helmet. Do you guys then feel like you have to satisfy and satiate that desire from the viewers and maybe find whatever you can on the helmet to kind of get it in there if there isn't much talking? Because I can understand it's out of sight, out of mind. They're not fixated on Antonio Brown, but then the viewers actually want some clarity on that. So how do you as a showhead go about and finding that information, or at least trying to steer the narrative somehow to include it?
Yes. So the focus really is how it's impacting the team there at camp. And that was the case in holdouts. Certainly remember the Revis holdout. And I think it's the case in these sort of moments when a player is away from the team. Even if we went and did a shoot with the player, we're not going to spend 24 hours a day with a crew away from camp. There's too much happening at camp. There really are 90 storylines. So what we do is say, okay, the audience is out there talking about this, and all we can do is present, here's how it was dealt with on the field, in the rooms. And the helmet issues, that's being dealt with at the league level, not the head coach level. So we try to address it for sure. We want to make sure that we don't have people disappointed. And while people who live and breathe football like you and I do might not get the courtroom scene that would really be different for us, but for most of the audience, just Antonio Brown talking about the injury to his feet or Jon Gruden missing him, that's a lot. That's real big access that, to be frank, no one else gets or could get. So we feel like we're delivering.
Well, I was going to say, NFL Films prides itself on, here's Brian Baldinger breaking down Akeem Hicks on a 3-4 scheme, and yet you guys can also speak to the mainstream audience who is also a watcher of Succession and Game of Thrones and all of those other shows. I want to go to the Antonio Brown foot images, and that's not easy to get him to do that. I imagine that takes some coaxing. I imagine that's a lot of organizing. But if you don't deliver that visual after the week of all of this talk, it is a letdown. Yet you not only delivered it, you got an amazing soliloquy from Antonio Brown, and you guys did it in a fashion that I don't think was exploiting him. How did the process of getting Brown to show those feet post cryotherapy, frostbite, whatever, on camera to you guys and feel comfortable enough to kind of go into what happened?
I think that speaks really to the legacy of the show, that players have watched the show long enough where they understand we're not going to do anything other than present the real documentary story. We're not going to give an opinion. If you notice on Hard Knocks, we very rarely have Liev Schreiber or us as filmmakers present a point of view. Our job as filmmakers on this show is to not say this player is better than that player, or this guy has a better shot than that guy, or here's the thing with Antonio Brown. We just show them telling their own story and going through their own story during these 5 weeks. So really our presentation is, hey, you remember who we are? We're NFL Films. We've been around since the beginning. Vince Lombardi trusted us in 1958. You can trust us, and we're going to just use your words and use your images. We're not going to then go to a segment where someone else gives an opinion about what you just said. We're very clean in presenting what happened and how it happened in the viewpoint of the people that it happened to. And then that creates talking points for the rest of the week. So it's really the best of both worlds.
So you've got this huge superstar in Brown, obviously a main storyline. Has he watched any of the first 2 episodes, and has he had any feedback to either you directly or the Hard Knocks production team?
The answer is we don't know. Knowing Antonio Brown, he's very well aware of his image, very well aware of his persona out there and aware of it. He certainly, I think, posted some screenshots from the show after episode 1 with his sons. But we really don't ask that sort of thing. It's, we're co-workers with him. So if we know he watched something, it's going to be because he's talking with other players about it. We try. If you notice on the show, we don't do any interviews. We don't do any sit-down interviews where we have a host ask questions of someone. That, to me, would be interfering with the reality. And as soon as you start presenting yourself as a filmmaker, as soon as you start interjecting yourself and saying, let's sit him down and ask him what he thinks about us. Well, to me, you're kind of crossing the line. We've done it once in a while, but it doesn't feel right. So the answer is, I hope he's watching, but my guess is he's got a lot more important things to do, as does the team. I know Coach Gruden has said he hasn't watched. For those involved in the show, they have much more important things to work on. They don't really care about us as much as we tend to care about us. The media, and us included, everyone who follows the NFL, only love the storylines because those guys concentrate so much on being the best. And that's what we love about them, is that they're incredible athletes, not necessarily that they're great personalities.
2 episodes in, you guys have delivered, but we're not even at halftime yet, Ken, so you got to get back on it. But I wanted to tell you that we appreciate you coming on the Hard Knocks podcast, giving us an inside look and a little bit of behind-the-scenes access. Keep it going. This has been an awesome season. We still have 3 more episodes to go.
All right, thanks. We're going back to work.
Talking with Ken left me thinking more about the Jon Gruden-Antonio Brown relationship. And as I was thinking about it, I was trying to imagine a player, or identify a player, who had played for Gruden but played with Antonio Brown. Remember, Gruden took 10 years away from coaching. It was in the Monday night booth. So that's a very limited group. Now picture a Venn diagram. The first circle is Jon Gruden. He's had a bunch of players, but he hasn't had many who still are active in the league. Then there's Antonio Brown, who's been in the league a bunch of years, but doesn't go back to Gruden's era. And then there's that third circle, which is Oakland Raiders experience. And if you have that Venn diagram, there's only one guy that I can think of, or that I could identify, that fills in that shaded middle portion. And that man is Bruce Gradkowski.
Hey, what's up, brother?
Bruce Gradkowski was a star quarterback at the University of Toledo. He was drafted by Jon Gruden and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 6th round of the 2006 NFL Draft. He started a bunch of games as a rookie at quarterback for Gruden, and 8 years later, after stops in Cleveland, in Oakland, and in Cincinnati, Bruce Gradkowski signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he was teammates with Antonio Brown. Bruce, we had your former teammate Rondé Barber on last week in the first Hard Knocks podcast episode, and he described Jon Gruden as tough but fair. You played for him as well. You played the quarterback position for him. When you saw some of the Antonio Brown news kind of sifting through the airwaves last week, whether it be the foot stuff or the helmet stuff or the fact that he's AWOL from the team, how did you think Gruden would react, knowing Gruden as well as you do?
Oh, man. Well, I knew Gruden was biting his tongue a little bit, because Gruden's a gym rat. I mean, he's the ultimate gym rat. All he wants to do is talk football, coach football, watch film. So he just wants to be involved in that stuff. And now it's a new age in the NFL. So you have to deal with a lot of off-the-field things, social media, guys that are celebrity status that aren't just football players but are celebrities. And I think he's handling it well. But I know Gruden just can't wait to just focus on the football field and get AB back to practice.
Yeah, and Brown is like as big an NFL superstar as you can imagine. He's on the cover of the Madden video game last year. He's in commercials all over the place. He was on with LeBron James on HBO's The Shop.
Right.
But you played with Antonio Brown back in 2014. What was the version of Antonio Brown that you knew 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I was with AB for 3 or 4 years, and look, he's a easy guy to like, because when he's on that practice field, he brings a different type of energy and attitude, and he works harder than anyone I've ever been around, being a 6th-round draft pick out of Central Michigan. He's just found a way to make it in this league, but it came through hard work. So that's the thing I remember about AB the most, and he's a fun-loving guy. But then, along with AB comes some of the off-field stuff of being late to meetings and doing some of the things we're seeing now, but teammates would take him as he is. You don't really hold it against him, at least, we didn't back then. But the last few years, though, it's almost gotten to be a little more drama stuff that I would have anticipated. To me, it's like, look, man, just get back in the building, find a way, because I know, number one, with this foot issue that he's dealing with his feet, that it's killing him not to practice. I mean, he's always had issues with his feet, and the Steelers would try to give him days off, but he didn't want them because he always wants to be out there, and that's the way he works, and that's his mindset. But then you have this helmet issue on top of it. So it's come too many things at once for the Raiders, and it's bringing a lot of attention for off the field when I know how Jon Gruden is, and he just wants to focus on football.
Yeah, and you were Ben Roethlisberger's backup quarterback in Pittsburgh. I assume you and Ben have a fairly good relationship, if not a great one. Brown obviously airing out issues he had with the quarterback over the offseason, basically burned every bridge with the Steelers organization and their fans, who are as fervent a fan base in all of football. He forces the trade to Oakland. So when you initially saw that your former coach, Jon Gruden, was now going to be paired with your former teammate, Antonio Brown, how did you envision that marriage being? And were you thinking, okay, this is a match made in heaven, or this could be combustible?
I kind of had two different takes, because number one, I knew Gruden would really get AB fired up again, because as we see on Hard Knocks now, I mean, that's Gruden. That's how animated he is, entertaining he is in team meetings. I mean, I remember when I first got drafted in the 6th round to Tampa Bay, Jon Gruden and I would spend all hours of the day in the offseason watching film, him trying to teach me the offense. And it was so entertaining and fun that I loved it. And I knew AB going there would be, revitalized again, rejuvenated, and be ready to play some football. But I also knew how detailed Jon Gruden is and how Derek Carr is. AB and Ben, they both have a street baller mentality, a backyard football type player, and they knew how to get on the same page. Whether the route was perfect or not, they found a way together, and I'm interested to see how that works with Derek Carr and AB. It's a very intriguing situation, especially how it started so far in training camp.
Do you think you're the only player in NFL history to be teammates with Antonio Brown and also have played for Jon Gruden? I was talking about the Venn diagram of Raiders, played for Gruden, and also is a former teammate of Antonio Brown. I think you're the only one that comes in the shaded area.
Man, is that crazy? Watching Hard Knocks, though, also made me think of the rookie hazing. Like, Jon Gruden was never a big guy on that kind of stuff. But the biggest thing we had to do is rookie night, where the rookies take the veterans out to dinner. So the offensive linemen, quarterbacks, tight ends, we all go to dinner, and we go to Morton's Steakhouse. So the bill comes, and it's $30,000. It was like $33,000.
Stop.
And
that's a lot of seafood towers.
I almost shit myself, because I was like, hey, I'm a 6th rounder. I'll put in like $2,000. It made me so nervous. And then Davin Joseph and Jeremy Trueblood were our 1st and 2nd round draft picks, offensive linemen, split the bill. But it was like funny. You see all the, making the guys stand up and sing. And I was thinking, what did we do? And I just remember that dinner. I almost had a heart attack, but I'm thankful the first 2-round draft picks, the big money guys, took care of it.
So you mentioned Joseph and Trueblood were 1st and 2nd round picks. You were a 6th round pick. The first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks have been focused heavily on these rookies. Do you have any advice for a rookie playing for Jon Gruden?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, number one, get in that playbook. Focus on what you can control, and that's from the head up. Mentally, you can control what you know, how hard you work, being on time, being at the right spot at the right time. I remember as a rookie, I would stay up till like 2 or 3 in the morning memorizing these plays, because I didn't want to get in the huddle and stumble over my words. I mean, Jon Gruden's playbook, there's a lot. And the play that comes to mind is Indy right 10, X short, fake 96 power king, naked left X slide. I was like, I am not getting in that huddle and stumbling over these words. But I'm going to say the play right so these guys look like I have confidence. And you see how Gruden's getting on Mike Glennon a little bit to be more animated in the huddle. You have to take control. Nathan Peterman, Gruden wants you to have control of that offense and also bring it with a mentality that guys are going to look at you and believe in you. And I think for rookies, you have to play with that confidence. But the way you can play with that confidence is knowing what to do first and foremost. So really reach out to those players around you and try to get in that playbook and focus on what you can control.
And Bruce, that's why we're having you on. Stories like that, unbelievable. Is there a chance this thing actually not only works, but the Raiders are a really good team and Gruden gets the best out of Antonio Brown and all of this comes together? Because through 2 episodes of Hard Knocks, they've been entertaining as hell, but I wouldn't put my stamp on the Raiders as being, Super Bowl ready right now.
Right. It's hard for me to think how well the Raiders will do just because of that division. But for my love for playing in Oakland, once a Raider, always a Raider, and you hear it on Hard Knocks, and, my relationship with Jon Gruden, I want them to do well. So I'm looking at it in a positive light that I really think they could get it going. I mean, I look on the defensive side of the ball, and I really think with the addition of Vontaze Burfict to help bring that mentality. Then you got Jonathan Abram. I mean, you already saw Gruden yelling at him to take it easy in practice, and I've always been a guy that I'd rather have to pull the reins on my players than try to make them more aggressive. So I know the Raiders defense needs that. So look, I'm looking at this thing in a positive light. So I really hope they could get it going because I think Jon Gruden's one of the number one motivators in the NFL. And if his team buys in, they could do something special.
Where can the listeners of the podcast hear you during the football season?
Well, I'm on NFL Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 88, every Thursday, 11 to 3 with Bruce Murray, and probably on my Twitter, BGradkowski5, and Instagram, BGrad05. So it'll be a fun season, my man. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, brother.
Each week on the Hard Knocks podcast, I pick an MVP of the episode. I got to be honest, I didn't know much about Raiders rookie defensive end Max Crosby before Tuesday night's episode, but then he sang some T-Pain.
I'ma buy you a drink. Let me take it home with me. I got money.
If you can sing like that, I am instantly a fan of yours. Crosby seems like a cool cat. He's got tattoos. He's got a really good vibe to him. I loved meeting Max Crosby on this episode. Unfortunately, he hurt his hand playing the Rams during the preseason game, and it sounds like he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks to heal. I do hope, though, we keep tabs on him and we get more of him on the show. In addition to the MVP, I want to give you guys something to keep an eye on for next week's episode each time we do this podcast. And the name that I'm really fascinated by hasn't even been mentioned on Hard Knocks yet, and that's rookie running back Josh Jacobs. I got to learn a lot about Jacobs before the draft in April, and his story is one of the most inspiring you will see. He was a star running back at the University of Alabama, and he was the first running back selected in the NFL draft. But his humble beginnings will blow you away. He was homeless at one point in his life. He was not heavily recruited by Alabama, and yet he found his way onto the field and was one of their most important players for the few seasons he played for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. He's also going to be a huge part of what the Raiders are doing on offense this season. He will be the bell cow. And yet, here we are in episode 2, and we have not met or seen or heard Josh Jacobs' story. No one can tell a story like Hard Knocks. No one can inspire us like the Hard Knocks producers can. And yet, they've got this one right under their nose. When will we see Josh Jacobs? When will we learn his story? And just how is he fitting in with the Oakland Raiders in his first training camp? And that's it for this week's episode of the Hard Knocks podcast. This show was produced by HBO Sports, NFL Films, and Pineapple Street Media. Also, check out the Hard Knocks Instagram page at Hard Knocks HBO. There's incredible stuff on there, including Hard Knocks Now, which is daily updates from Raiders training camp. So go check out that. And while you're at it, you can also get more Hard Knocks content with Dan Hansis' Hard Knocks recaps on NFL.com. And listeners, we want to hear from you. What's your take on the Antonio Brown situation? What'd you think of this week's episode? And what do you think of the Raiders' chances in 2019? Tweet me at pschrags. That's PSCHRAGS. Maybe there's a guest you want to hear from, or there's something that you want to know. You can email me. All of that information is in the show's info notes. I'm your host, Peter Schrager, and make sure to watch episode 3 of Hard Knocks on HBO next Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. You can find the Hard Knocks podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to rate, review, and to subscribe. We'll be back with a new episode next Friday. Thanks, everyone.